Hello, I'm Rosemary Hannah, and welcome to the Bahamas Then and Now, an educational series where we'll be talking about our history, heritage, arts, and culture. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. We're here today with educator and artist James Rolle. Welcome to the show, James.
It's a pleasure and privilege to be here.
Thank you for coming. James, tell us a little about yourself, where you grew up, and the values that were instilled in you in your childhood.
I grew up on Wolf Road near Heaven Alley, next to the infamous Bodie's Bank. I attended St. Barnabas Church. That was due to proximity, having really been baptized at St. Agnes Church. All of my siblings were. Attended certain junior, senior schools and came under the influence of Carlton E. Francis. He and my father were very close, and naturally I couldn't get away with anything because there would always be that report to my father.
Now, the values that were instilled in you as a youth and your peers at that time, how do you see compared to the current day?
We've lost quite a number of the values which were traditional to us as youngsters growing up. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I do see some things remaining. You can go downtown and you, for example, can see children coming from the C.R. Walker School, and they would pass you and they would say, "Good afternoon." And some tourists who might be in town and hear this, they would look askance because you will not find American youth doing that. So children still have some of that. But I think, unfortunately, the closeness to the United States has impacted us in some ways negatively. For example, when growing up, I could not call my father Alfred. It was Daddy, or I couldn't call someone older than myself by their first name. But some parents, some mothers don't want to be called mother. Mm-hmm. They want to be called by their name, and they want to be pals with their youngsters rather than guiding them.
Yes. I remember that when I was young too, that our parents' friends who were very close to us, we would call them like Miss Ivy, Miss Alice, mm-hmm. or whatever, yes. Instead of saying Mrs. because it was too formal, or, mm-hmm. or auntie or whatever. Yes. But there was always that respect for elders.
Naturally.
Getting into your career as an artist, how did that first manifest itself in you? And how did people around you react when you decided that you wanted to become an artist?
It's very interesting. Mm-hmm. I had a cousin who served in the Korean War, much decorated. He was a sergeant, and he came to visit us. And while he was at our homestead on Wolf Road, we saw him doing this drawing. And it's a rather interesting subject because here was this woman smoking this pipe. And so, notwithstanding the subject matter, we saw that he had this ability to draw. So that inspired both my brother Edison and myself to, mm-hmm. pursue art. Later on, when I was at St. Barnabas Church, there's a Deacon James Gain who was attached to Canon John Kelnam, and he had this Abram series of reproductions, these books. Okay. And they were like Rembrandt, there were Rubens, and I even attempted to copy a Rubens portrait of his two sons, and that was in oils. I still have the copy to this day. But then later on, I did the Draw Me thing that used to come in the magazines.
Oh yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
I was 13 years old when I won that competition. It was to be a correspondence course, but Deacon Gain persuaded my father to have us go to art school because he said in the art school, when problems would arise, if you have a teacher on the spot, they can easily guide you in the right direction.
Very interesting.
Because the correspondence thing was kind of rather impersonal.
Yes.
So we were fortunate to have a father who took the advice. He was a carpenter, later merchant, landlord, and being a merchant, we had access to certain materials which you could not ordinarily, we could afford to buy. Yes. We used to take the stocking boxes that the ladies, when their stockings came in these boxes, we would serve them the stocking in a brown paper bag or paper thing, and then we would smash down the box that they came in, and
use
they
it as a canvas,
us, or they would a good white cartridge paper upon which we did pen and ink drawings.
Isn't that wonderful? Very innovative.
Yeah, we had to be. When before you become very creative.
Very good. Okay, now tell us a little bit about your collaboration with your late wife, Telsine, who was also an educator, poet, playwright, and wrote many books. Tell us about that.
It began when I was teaching at St. Augustine's College. And I had gone down to the Bahamas Teachers College where Telsine was, doing her first duties. And she had these long studies that the students did. And so she asked me to illustrate them for her. So I agreed to do it. And then when I had brought them back, she said to me, "When will I see you again?" And then, I was not dating anyone at the time, so I said
very romantic,
I said to myself, yes, I said to myself, someone wants to see me. So we started to see one another, and I remember this was the age of Roberta Flack. We went over to Paradise Island to see one of her concerts. And of course, Telsine was into the theater, the drama circle and all of that.
Right, yes, I remember that too.
And there was this play on, would you believe, it was called Lovers. And so we went to that. It was a comedy. And then one thing led to the other. And thanks to the late Aiken Thompson, he persuaded Telsine that I was the one.
It was the right one. That's very good. He was a good matchmaker.
Oh, he was. And they say about Aiken Thompson, once it's sealed, very few
it's sealed.
get unsealed.
Tell us more about your relationship with your wife, Telsine, and some of the publications that she's done, and her plays and poetry.
Well, Song of the Sorrows was the first publication. It was poetry for primary school. She was fortunate to have it published by Macmillan in Basingstoke, England. And what is extraordinary about that, the author is pictured naturally on the plaque. But then they decided that they were going to put me also there because I have not known it as a practice that the illustrator would be pictured. So who was I to argue? So that was the first publication. And then in 1975, she won the literary competition for 25th anniversary of the University of West Indies, Woman Take Two, a
very popular play. Very, very popular,
right.
Yes.
And the thing about Woman Take Two is a play in 3 acts, because I remember one of the critics said that more often than not in the Bahamas, people write a 1-act play on a sheet of paper and they say, oh, they're doing great things. But then Macmillan wanted to publish it. I had done a poster for the production. It was really first staged by the University Players. That's 1979. So I did the illustration, and then they used some modern technology, computer technology, to more or less enhance my original drawing. But the essence is there, with the women dancing, and I was pleased to see that they maintained the spirit of my illustration.
That's excellent. James, you later became involved with the National Art Gallery. Tell us about your experience there.
I was fortunate to end my public service career at the National Art Gallery of the Bahamas. It seems that in my career, I've always been at the beginning of things. When I went to St. Augustine's College to teach art, I actually founded the art department and initiated the GCA program there. Later on, 1973, Jumbay Village is coming on stream, and here I am, the curator manager for Jumbay Village. After a period of time, I'm in the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, and then saw the opportunity to apply for a post at the National Art Gallery of the Bahamas. And this, again, was the beginning of an institution. I loved these beginnings. And I met John Cox. He and I were the first education officers. The now Dr. Erica James was the director. That was a very interesting experience in this regard. John Cox and I are like 30 years different in age, but we got along very well. And it's interesting that he did art education, I did art education. I think he minored in illustration. I had done a course in illustration.
So in essence, you were the then, and John was the now.
Definitely. And John continues to be the now. Yeah. He's now at Bahamas doing wonderful things.
I'm glad that you mentioned Jumbay Village, James. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we return. We'll be right back.
You're watching the Bahamas Then and Now. This episode is brought to you by the Private Trust Corporation Limited, Dungalik Studios, United Sanitation Service, and Vodio.
This is the Bahamas. 700 islands, reefs, and keys, sporting a distinct history and heritage all its own. This is New Providence, most populated, industrialized island at the center of the archipelago. Home of Nassau, the capital city, seat of Parliament, location of political and social revolution, site from which our nation declared its independence. And this is Over the Hill, a community, a series of neighborhoods in what was then considered Southwest New Providence. Settled by slaves, having served as the midwife of national deliverance. Over the Hill, a breeding ground of nation builders, constructing trait by trait, precept upon precept, character-toting, culture-shaping leaders. Over the Hill, where independence was born, where the naval string of Bahamianization is buried, where Junkanoo got polished. Over the Hill, where sense and sensitivity were kneaded into the dough of children's souls, where people reverently genuflected to the image of God in every man. Over the Hill. East Street, Market Street, Blue Hill Road, Baintown, Grantstown, Anderson Street, Augusta Street, DeFort Hill, McPherson Street, Over the Hill, McCullough Corner, Hay Street, Glinton Square, where? Mason's Addition, Jail Alley, Lewis Street, Over the Hill. The Coakleys, the Smiths, the Johnsons, the Blydens, the DeStoops, the Grants, and the Coopers, the McPhersons and the Pindlings, the Allens and the Winders. Over the Hill. The Hannahs, the Bostricks, the Burnsides, the Bethels, the Walkers, the Enuses, and the Thompsons, the McCartneys, and the Gibsons over the hill. What if we went back and dug into the soil of our glorious past? And what if we studied the roots and found the patterns of Bahamian unity and success and progress, and superimpose those on the social ills of Lil Nassau, the social ills of the Bahamas in general? What would happen? What would happen if we really understood where we came from? Our heritage is not ghetto. Our language is not profanity. Our resolution is not violence. We are Bahamians, kings and queens, gentlemen and ladies, athletes and warriors in every sphere, geniuses and priests, artists and leaders, and much of it started over the hill.
Welcome back. We're sitting here with James Rolle, our guest for the day. And before the break, James, you mentioned Jumbay Village. That was something I'm sure that was very dear to your heart and to the hearts of very many people. And you know, a lot of things went on at Jumbay Village. I want you to tell us about the genesis of Jumbay Village and your involvement there, and Mr. Moxie's dream.
Yes. Jumbay Village started as the Jumbay Festival in Coconut Grove Avenue around 1971. After its appeal, it was thought that there needed to be a more permanent place for those activities dealing with our heritage, because it used to be a situation where it would be put up and it would be taken down. And the idea for Jumbay Village came about when we got into this independence frame of mind and we thought about our cultural identity. And then it was decided to research who we were. We didn't need to search for anything. We already had it. We just need to bring it forward. Hence the need for a museum, art gallery. Then there were the craft shops where people could practice their craft and visitors would come and see them actually producing things like conch shell jewelry, in the case of the late Bruce Hall, the coconut shell jewelry, and Norris Stubbs, unfortunately now deceased. Norris Stubbs had done a chandelier out of conch shells, and it was functional. He was a man in physics, and so he applied it in a practical manner. Senator Letta Strong, she did the thing called a 7-way dress, and that was popular during its day. There were the Marshalls who had a ceramic store. The art gallery became the focal point for the school exhibitions, and we did some 22 annual school exhibitions, beginning with independence. We also had the adult division. Many of the artists who have become household names went through Jumbay Village. Max Taylor was shown there, Stan Burnside, Homer Williams, yours truly. Others, my late brother Edison Godfrey Rolle, the Fifth Drink was shown there. So it was a very pivotal year when I got involved in Jumbay Village. It was the year of independence, and the independence exhibition opened at Jumbay Village, I remember clearly, on July 8, 1973. Mr. Marks, of course, was the parliamentary secretary responsible for that. This was a man who had irrepressible energy.
So was Jumbay Village his brainchild?
It was, definitely. The thing about the village, it also coincided with Jumbay summer. And after they would have the Jumbay summer activities on Bay Street, people would actually parade down to Jumbay Village. They would pass Peanuts Taylor's drum beat club on the way to Jumbay Village. But once they got into the village, that became something else, because there would be a spontaneous kind of like a Junkanoo parade around the perimeter. There was a huge structure that was intended to be the theater. As a matter of fact, Mr. Cedric Scott had designed all of the necessary things that would go into a theater. And unfortunately, by 1974, he felt that things weren't moving in any positive direction, so he went back to the States. And for him, that was a very fortunate thing.
That was unfortunate for us, then.
Yes, unfortunate for us, but fortuitous circumstance had him join up with Sir Sidney Poitier, who had extended him an invitation over a period of 10 years. Whenever you are ready, you can join me, and he did.
Isn't that wonderful? I'm talking about Jumbay Village and its demise. I think it was very unfortunate that we lost so much. And I think you mentioned to me some time ago that many of the artifacts that were there were lost. Do you think we've been able to recapture any of the essence of what was at Jumbay Village today?
The artifacts could have been lost.
Oh,
what happened is the persons who were determined to have us vacate Jumbay Village, they virtually didn't treat us graciously. They harassed us. But we did what we had to do. We had the artifacts collected, and now they are reposed at the Department of Archives.
Very good.
There you had the West African warrior game. We had that. There was the rope making machine, the fish pots, and unfortunately the Junkanoo costumes made of sponge, made of cloth, they deteriorated due to the fact that there were some structural problems with the museum. So the roof leaked, there were fissures in the wall. So when it rained, the sponge costumes got wet and rotted away.
And you had been sent off to get some training to be the curator for the gallery down there, weren't you?
Yes, I was sent to Port Royal, Jamaica, in, I think it was in 1979, to study museum art design and lettering. But when I came back, that which I was being groomed for, this knowledge, would not be applied because the village had been destroyed. And so I have the diploma, but I don't have the facility to work in. And that's like some time ago. But I actually was the last man standing in Jumbay Village, the very last set of exhibitions before it was demolished. And the people who came to Jumbay Village, you would be surprised. St. George Chisholm had come, the Vienna Boys Choir visited. There was a group called the Apollo Stars who actually performed in the theater. Julius Harris, he played Bumpy in the Shaft movie. He also visited Jumbay Village. The village had great potential.
Yes, it did.
But the persons who were then the political directorate, they lacked vision. And to some extent today, they still lack vision.
Most unfortunate. How important is it to preserve the Bahamian culture, and how do we go about getting people to appreciate what we have?
The preservation of Bahamian culture is very important. And I do agree with the late Jackson Burnside that he hopes by 2020 or so, people will come here for the culture rather than for sun, and sea. Now there is currently this buzz about gambling. We are a gaming nation, they say. But gaming is so fickle. Other destinations have embraced that, and when the players find another area to go to, they do that, and no matter how many structures you build, you could end up having a white elephant. People want culture. The world has become very culturally aware. As a matter of fact, UNESCO had established something they called in 1981 the World Decade for Cultural Development. And they wanted to sensitize people about the importance of heritage, and also that you could apply it to your tourism industry. The Cubans have done wonderful with it. They have had Old Havana become a World Heritage Site. We could have that too, but just need to make the effort, do the required research. I went to Cuba in 1991, and they took us to one of their conservatory labs, and they had this old piece of lace which was 100 years old, and they were restoring that. They don't lose out on anything.
That's fascinating. We know we have the National Art Gallery, and I think it's a good thing now too that we have other private galleries like Dungalik and Antonius's and some other galleries. Tell me about that.
That, in a very positive way, complements the National Art Gallery, because the National Art Gallery tends to be more or less like a historical preservation of Bahamian visual arts. Whereas the private galleries, they deal with what is current, and they show quite a number of new art, new generation of artists. It's not that the National Art Gallery does not have its section where they show young artists, but you have more of like Dungalik, the Aguilar Foundation, Pop-Up. These give opportunity for some of the younger artists.
And then there are also some private collectors. I know Dawn Davies has a very large private collection. How do we as individuals and maybe even other small groups go about encouraging the preservation of our culture and arts?
I think we need to encourage private institutions like the Aguilar Foundation and Dawn Davies. In the United States, they do not depend solely on government. You have the Gettys, and you have the Frick Museums. These are private institutions. You could go to the Frick Museum and you'll see that wonderful work, The Polish Rider by Rembrandt. And these are privately funded institutions. Generally, the tax structure helps America in that regard, because these rich people, they can get tax write-offs, and that is like an incentive to do charitable things and cultural things. So I wish we had that kind of thing.
James, thank you for being with us and sharing your insight into art and culture in the Bahamas.
It has been a pleasure.
It was really nice having you. We encourage you to continue watching the series, The Bahamas Then and Now. Thank you for being with us again, James.